Hi, I'm Launi with Learn Law for All. And today on our podcast, we have Daryl Weinman with us. And we just did a CLE on orders of protection in Texas. And so we're going to talk to Daryl about that. Daryl is the founder of Weinman and Associates PC in Austin, and she's a family law specialist certified by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization. She handles all areas of divorce and has a strong courtroom presence. And her excellence is also reflected in her AVA, which is 10.0. And if you're familiar with that a 10.0 is not easy to get, is it, Daryl? I mean, there's people who complain somewhere, right? And they want you to have a lot of things on there. So that's really great. And so thank you so much for being here. As always, listening to this podcast and watching this podcast is not creating an attorney-client relationship. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. I am only licensed in Arizona, and Daryl is licensed in Texas. So please keep that in mind. And then our contact information will be listed on the statements and the description of this podcast. So thank you and welcome. Welcome, Daryl.
Thank you.
So we did just do a CLE on the orders of protection in Texas and protective orders, I guess, in general, TROs. And it was very interesting. I think a little different from a lot of states, but I think there's a lot of similarities too and things that people need to understand. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, say a person comes to Texas and comes into your office and says, hey, I want to get a restraining order against my ex. What do you tell them?
Well, I'm going to need to know, because people use the terms interchangeably. They come in, they say, I need a restraining order, and they might need a protective order. They might need a restraining order. So I need to find out what's going on. And so I'll ask, okay, why do you think you need a restraining order? And because there has to be family violence, or at least the threat of family violence to get a protective order. It's a much heightened level of protection than a restraining order. So restraining orders are used in all kinds of civil cases for all different things. And a restraining order is just an order not to do something. Sometimes in business litigation, there's you are ordered not to conduct your business or sell this product or use this name for 14 days till we get to a hearing, and then the judge will decide, if that's going to last longer. In family law, there's restraining orders that go into effect, not because anybody's done anything wrong, nobody's even alleged to have done anything wrong, but we just need to freeze the status quo. Like don't drain the bank accounts, don't kidnap the kids, don't harass, don't threaten, don't. So it's just kind of a laundry list of things not to do, not that anyone has done it. But they are restrained from doing it, not just for 14 days. Usually it's going to be mutual to both of them for the pendency of a divorce case. But if they come in and say, my ex has threatened me, has threatened to hurt me, members of my family, has hurt me, has hurt my kids, I want that kind of restraining order. Well, that is a protective order. And that is a totally different type of order, because that means you are alleging they have done something wrong, and that you need special protection. The difference in violations is significant too, because to violate a restraining order, you could be subject to civil contempt, meaning if you think somebody violated a restraining order, you have to file a motion with the court saying, I think they violated this order, here's how. You serve the other person, you set a hearing, you go into civil court, and the judge will decide if they violated it and what the punishment's going to be. And it could potentially include jail time. In a protective order, if you have a protective order in place, a final protective order, and it is registered in law enforcement's system, all you have to do is pick up the phone and say, I have a protective order, that person is outside my house or is, texting me nonstop or whatever it is, they will respond and they will take it very seriously. They'll respond quickly, and it is criminal. So it can also be civil. You can also file a motion for contempt, but it is criminal. And a violation of protective order the first time is Class A misdemeanor, up to a year in jail, up to a $4,000 fine. So it is serious. And then if there's multiple violations, the penalties just go up from there. So big difference between the two orders. So that's when they come in, I need to know, well, who is it? Who do you need the restraining order against? If it's your neighbor, I want them to stay off my lawn, totally different, not a protective order. But if there's family violence, then yes.
Okay, so say someone comes in and hands you a document and says, okay, I've just been served with this protective order. Um, it's BS, which they all say that it is, right? What do you talk to them about? What do you say?
Well, for one, I'm going to go through the affidavit. So in order to get a protective order, the applicant has to write out an affidavit of all the facts as to why they need this protective order. And so that'll be attached to what the respondent received. So they'll bring that into me and I'll go through the whole affidavit and say, well, tell me about this. She says you did this, this, and this. And usually it's not complete fabrication. It may be exaggeration. There's additional things in there that didn't happen, but usually they'll say, well, yeah, we had this argument, but here's what she didn't put in there, or, she started it, or, whatever it is, and kind of go through, and then that can assess how strong of a case is it? Do we really want to fight it? And if it sounds like something that we could fight, and he's saying, I don't want to pay for a big battle. Why don't I just agree to this? And I'll go through, well, you can, that is an option, especially if you don't have kids together and you're planning to just, walk away and never see this person again. But if you do have a final protective order against you, you cannot possess firearms, which in Texas is a significant thing. You can't have a concealed weapons license. I mean, you can't even go to a gun range and rent a gun for the period of time that you're there. No guns. You also will be in the protective order registry, which is fairly new, and I don't know how many people know about it, but but people are going to find out about it, and it's public record anyway. So it can and probably will affect your employment, depending on what you do for a living. It can affect your ability to date in the future when, somebody who's, especially you meet them online and they do a little background search and they see, oh, you had a protective order, you have a protective order against you. And then they look up and see what the allegations were. I mean, that's going to affect your future. So just saying, yeah, I don't feel like fighting it, I don't want to pay to have to fight it, you might want to consider what the ramifications are. And if ever somebody in the future says, I need a protective order against you, which happens not necessarily because you're a violent person, but because they know you had one in the past. So they'll go, oh, well, then I want one too. He pushed me too. And the penalties for a second protective order are higher.
Oh, they are? I did not know that. What kind of penalties are there?
Well, for one, a first protective order is valid for up to 2 years. If there's multiple protective orders, they can go up to 5 years. And then violations go up. So the first violation is a Class A misdemeanor. Second violation becomes a state jail felony, and they go up from there depending on what the violations are. And sometimes violations are minor. You sent a text message that she decided was harassing. And maybe you didn't mean it that way, but that's the way it came across. It could potentially lead to a finding by the court that it's a violation. And even if you don't go to jail for it, you got it on your record. So the next time, whether it's her or somebody else, penalties go up. So it's significant.
Okay, so if somebody decides, okay, I'm not going to fight it, is it automatically 2 years, or can the person ask for it to be more, or how does the time get set?
So the applicant gets to ask for how long they want it, and it's up to 2 years. If they don't ask for a time period, usually a judge is going to just say 2 years. And this is if there's been bodily injury or threat of bodily injury. If it's serious bodily injury, or if the behavior rises to the level of a felony, so any kind of impeding breath, any kind of choking, serious bodily injury, threat of serious bodily injury, that's a felony. And so that's up to 5 years. So the applicant can say, look, we have a kid together, we're going to have to work this out. I'm pretty sure that he'll calm down and we'll be able to work this out. I only want this for 6 months or 1 year or 18 months. The judge will generally listen to what the applicant is saying. But they can go up to 2 years or up to 5 years, or if it's a stalking protective order, for life.
And then once that's gone, they can get their gun back or their concealed weapon thing back, right?
Yes.
Assuming they haven't violated it.
Yes. So, I mean, if they have a criminal conviction, that might be a problem on the criminal side. But if it's just the protective order, then when they are no longer the subject of a protective order, they can get their gun back.
And then do they go off of the registry, or once on the registry, they're there forever?
Once there's been a protective order, it stays on the registry, just like it stays in public record with the courts. So, once it's there, anybody can find it. So that's, if it's a bogus protective order, it's worth fighting. And, if you do have kids, not just with the applicant, but with anybody else, it's, people use them as to get a leg up in a custody fight. Go, he's got a protective order. So it could affect the custody of your children, whether with this person or somebody else. And so it's another reason to consider, do you really want to just let it happen?
So have you ever looked at the protective order registry?
I
Have you
actually have
gone on
not
there?
looked at it. So I think in 2021 is when it was created in Texas, and I have not looked it up. I've not heard about it since then. When it first came out, I think it was by September 1, 2021, it was supposed to be set up by the state. And I looked and it just wasn't set up yet. I mean, just because the legislature says do it doesn't mean it actually happens. And I've not heard a word about it since. So I don't
Just going
know.
into it right now.
Okay.
I thought I'd pull it up while we're chatting. Open registry, public access, Texas courts, local rules, bail, protective orders, citations, notices. It talks about it.
I'll have to look and see if it's been set up, but either way, it's protective orders are civil cases. So they're filed with the court clerks. Anybody can look it up. In fact, anybody can look it up even if it was denied. If the case was open, you can still get into it and see the affidavit and what the other person alleged.
Yeah, it says you have to enter the criteria. So you would have to enter like, let's see if somebody named John Smith had one. Birth year, 2000. County of Austin. Well, there is nobody named John Smith born in the year 2000 in Austin having protective order. So I guess you definitely have to know, you don't just get a big list that you get to go through.
I would think if you meet somebody online and you want to do a quick background check, that is, or it's going to be one way that people will.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I would do it. Just,
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there that are kind of dangerous these days, and you just want to make sure that you don't, thankfully I'm married and I don't have to worry about that, but
yeah,
man,
you might want to hear not just, you want to hear what they've been accused of.
right.
Maybe they got the protective order was entered because of a finding of, well, he pushed me. Okay, maybe it got entered for that. But let's see what she says. If he says, oh yeah, we just got into this shoving match, but then you go in and you see, nope, he, threw
That's what I was wondering.
and
You think
lodged in my leg.
do you think it talks about the whole, like all the accusation? Do you think you can see that?
Well, in public records, you can. So the
Okay.
application with the affidavit gets filed with the court. And so I would think that the registry is going to have all the pleadings, like anything that's filed with the court. And so, yeah, the affidavit is attached.
Oh,
And so all the
interesting.
allegations are on there.
Oh, that's very interesting. Well,
I would
that's
think
good
it
to know.
doesn't make the registry unless there has been a protective order granted. But if it's been granted and he's telling you, oh yeah, but it's just because of this little thing, and then you look it up and see, well, this is what she says you did.
Yeah, that would be very scary. Just now I want to start searching them for my daughter.
Yeah,
And my
for
son,
sure.
really. Probably both of them.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot more protective orders. So I think men used to be afraid to come forward and say, I'm being abused, but men get abused, and particularly in same-sex relationships. So, I keep using the term, she's the applicant and he's the respondent, but that's not always the case.
No, I had a client that was very much an abused man. I've actually had two it was very obvious. They were, the woman was just like, she would take her heels and just while he was laying on the ground, just, put it in his side.
Yeah.
Just things like that. And it's just, there are abusive situations and a lot of men don't come forward, and they need to start. I do believe they need to start, and it doesn't make them weak. It just makes them not have to deal with that.
Yeah, in Austin, we had the Women's Advocacy Project, which was put in place to represent women who are victims of domestic violence. It's now that they renamed it years ago to the Texas Advocacy Project, because it's not just women that they're representing.
Right.
And now with the, I've heard so many stories of, somebody's asleep on the couch, they take their thumb and open their phone and go through their phone that way.
Right. That's 100%. That's happening a lot.
Yes.
That's happening. Or the face thing. Although I think your eyes need to be open for the face thing, right?
I think so.
I don't know. I'm so thankful I'm not involved in that anymore. Or really at all. So, well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. And for anyone who has an interest in this, check out our CLE, and it'll be in the Texas section. But I think a lot of this can be national, so we might put it there too. So thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.